The night air in Enugu was thick with the smell of rain and old secrets. Thunder rumbled low in the distance as 23-year-old Ngozi stood in the dim corridor of her father's house. No, her stepmother's house now. Her face still burned from the fresh slap, but her eyes stayed dry. "Lazy girl," Mama Cecilia snapped from inside the parlor. "You think crying will bring your father back?" Ngozi didn't reply. She knew better than to talk back. She'd learned that lesson long ago, the day after her father's burial, when Cecilia had tossed her clothes into a corner and declared the big bedroom hers now. Since then, Ngozi had lived like a ghost in her own home, silent, obedient, forgotten. Once, this house had been full of warmth. Her father, Chief Mbakwe, had adored her. Even after he remarried following her mother's death, he made sure Ngozi had everything. But the moment his coffin hit the red earth, Cecilia's mask cracked. She turned cold, controlling, cruel. Ngozi became the maid. Every morning she swept the compound. Every night she served Cecilia warm tea. In between, she cooked, washed, ironed, and cleaned without thanks, without rest. Yet through it all, she never raised her voice. Her friends called her foolish. "Why don't you leave?" they asked. But Ngozi couldn't. This was her father's house, her only connection to him. Tonight, like most nights, she tiptoed to her room, a small, windowless space once used for storage. She lit a candle and sat on her thin mattress, staring at her father's picture. He had died too suddenly. A stroke, they said. But Ngozi always wondered, what if it wasn't just nature? She pressed the photo to her chest. "Daddy, I miss you," she whispered. The next morning, as she stirred ogbono soup in the kitchen, she heard the crash. A loud thud from upstairs. Then silence. She froze. Seconds later, the house girl, Ifeoma, came running. Auntie Cecilia fell. "She can't move." Ngozi dropped the spoon and ran. Cecilia lay on the floor, her face twisted in pain, half her body limp. The doctor confirmed it, a partial stroke. The irony wasn't lost on Ngozi. Now it was Cecilia who needed help to eat, bathe, and walk. That night, as the rain poured down hard, Ngozi sat beside her stepmother's bed, spoon-feeding her slowly. "You think I need your pity?" Cecilia snapped, her voice hoarse. "No, Ma," Ngozi said softly, wiping her chin. "Just offering help." She stood to leave, but Cecilia grabbed her wrist weakly. Her eyes, for the first time, flickered with something Ngozi couldn't read. Guilt? Pain? Regret? "I'm not done punishing you," Cecilia muttered. Ngozi walked away without a word. But as she stepped into the hallway, her heart beat faster. Not out of fear, something else. Because for the first time in years, something was shifting. And deep down she knew this house still held secrets. And one of them was about to surface. The days blurred into weeks. Cecilia's world shrank from commanding rooms to struggling for breath in her bed. She hated every moment of it. Her sharp tongue dulled, but the bitterness in her eyes remained. She hated being fed, hated being washed, hated needing help from the girl she once called a worthless orphan. And yet Ngozi never stopped. She cleaned the bedsheets daily, learned how to give sponge baths, cooked soft meals that Cecilia could chew, and stayed up all night when her coughs wouldn't stop. She didn't do it for love, no, that had been crushed years ago. She did it because she refused to become like Cecilia. Ifeoma, the house girl, watched in confusion. One evening, she whispered, "Auntie Ngozi, why do you still care for her? After everything?" Ngozi's answer was simple. "Because if I don't, I'll lose the part of me that still remembers how to be kind." Sometimes, Cecilia stared at her with something close to disbelief. One night, after Ngozi helped her sit up, she muttered, "You're waiting for me to die, aren't you?" Ngozi blinked, taken aback. "No." "Then why are you here?" Cecilia's voice cracked. "You think if you're kind, I'll leave you something? You'll get nothing." Ngozi didn't respond. She just placed a pillow behind her back and said, "Good night, Ma." Cecilia turned her face away, but Ngozi saw it, that flicker again. Regret. Still, the house was heavy. not just with silence but with memory. In her father's old study, dust gathered on shelves filled with books, awards, and framed photos. One afternoon, while searching for an old bill, Ngozi opened a drawer she hadn't touched in years and found a torn envelope addressed to her in her father's handwriting. The letter inside was short. "If anything ever happens to me, don't trust everything you see. Cecilia has her demons, but so does this house. Stay strong, my daughter. The truth will always find its way." Ngozi's hands trembled. What demons? What truth? She tucked the letter back, her mind spinning. That evening, Cecilia refused to eat. "I'm tired," she said. "Leave me alone." Ngozi didn't argue. She placed the untouched soup on the bedside table and turned to leave. "Ngozi," Cecilia called weakly. She turned. But Cecilia only looked at her for a long time, eyes clouded with something strange. She opened her mouth to speak, but then her body tensed, and she began to cough violently. Ngozi rushed forward, but it passed quickly. "I'm fine," she whispered. Ngozi lingered at the door, unsettled, because that look in Cecilia's eyes, it wasn't hatred anymore. It looked a lot like fear. But of what? 3 months passed. Cecilia's health declined faster than anyone expected. Her frame shrank, her voice faded, and for the first time since Ngozi had known her, the woman became quiet. Not peaceful, quiet. Sometimes she just stared out the window, eyes distant, as if watching ghosts move through the compound. Other times, she'd mumble to herself, names Ngozi didn't recognize, dates she had never heard. Most of her family, cousins, nephews, even her own brother, stopped visiting altogether. "She's a burden now," Ifeoma said one evening. "People disappear when suffering arrives." But Ngozi stayed. She fed her, turned her over when bedsores threatened, even sang softly when the nights got too heavy. She didn't expect gratitude, but sometimes, just before sleep, Cecilia would whisper "thank you," in a voice so faint, it almost sounded like wind. Then one quiet Tuesday something changed. Ngozi entered the room and found Cecilia sitting up, alone. She looked weak but alert, her fingers wrapped tightly around a worn leather notebook. "I wrote something," she said. Ngozi raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" "A letter." Cecilia coughed, wincing. "It's for the lawyer. When I'm gone." Ngozi stood frozen. "Come," Cecilia motioned. "Take it. And promise me you'll give it to Barrister Akeem." Ngozi took the envelope, confused. It was thick, heavy. Her name was scrawled across it in shaky handwriting. "I don't understand," she said softly. "You will," Cecilia murmured. "When I die, take it to him. That's all." She looked like she wanted to say more, but her eyes closed slowly, her body sinking back into the pillows. A wave of weariness swept over her. That night, Ngozi sat in her small room, staring at the sealed envelope. Should she open it? Temptation burned in her chest. But she remembered her father's words, "Don't trust everything you see." So she waited. 10 days later, Cecilia's breathing grew shallow. A priest was called. The house fell silent. On the 11th day, just before dawn, she passed. There were no screams, no drama, just a long, quiet exhale and then stillness. Ngozi closed her eyes beside the bed, whispered a prayer, and covered her stepmother's fragile body with a soft wrapper. News spread fast. By afternoon, the house buzzed with people who hadn't been there in years. Relatives, neighbors, extended family, all suddenly interested in Cecilia's affairs. Some offered half-hearted condolences. Others whispered about property and inheritance. A few eyed Ngozi like she didn't belong. She was just the house girl, essentially, someone muttered. "Watch and see, Cecilia left everything to her brother," another said. Ngozi ignored them all. The burial was quick and formal, held at the family plot. Cecilia was lowered beside Chief Mbakwe, something that felt wrong, but no one questioned. 3 days later, a message came from the family lawyer. "Come to my office. The will is ready to be read." Ngozi tucked the envelope into her handbag and stared out the window. She had no idea what Cecilia had written. But by this time tomorrow everyone would know. The air in Barrister Aquim's office was thick with perfume, sweat, and expectation. Old ceiling fans spun lazily overhead as family members crammed into the room. Cecilia's younger brother, 2 of her nephews from Abuja, a distant cousin with gold teeth, and a few others who barely spoke during the funeral but showed up for this. Ngozi sat quietly in the corner, clutching her handbag, the sealed envelope still inside. No one acknowledged her, not even with a nod. Shebi, she was just the caregiver? One cousin whispered loudly. Maybe Cecilia left her small change, another replied with a smirk. Barrister Aquim entered, a short man with tired eyes and thick glasses. He cleared his throat and sat behind a polished mahogany desk. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, thank you for coming. Before we proceed with the formal reading of Madame Cecilia Mbakwe's last will and testament, I must honor one final instruction she left. He looked directly at Ngozi. Miss Ngozi Mbakwe, please bring forth the letter she gave you. Whispers filled the room instantly. Ngozi stood, walked to the desk, and handed over the envelope. Barrister Aquim inspected the seal, nodded, and slid it open with a brass paper knife. Inside were 2 items, a folded handwritten letter and a second sealed document. He read the letter silently. His expression changed, just slightly. Then he cleared his throat again and said, "This letter is to be read aloud." The room fell silent. He began, "To everyone gathered, if you are hearing this, then I am no longer alive. Good. Maybe now I can say what I never had the courage to say when I still had time. First, to my family, stop pretending you cared. You abandoned me the moment I became too sick to host dinners and lend money. You only returned for what you hoped to gain. Let me be clear, you will gain nothing. Second, to Ngozi, my stepdaughter, I made your life hell. After your father died, I let grief turn into cruelty. I saw you as a threat, not a child. And yet, you stayed. You wiped my mouth when I was too weak to speak. You dressed my wounds. You fed me when I didn't deserve it. You didn't become like me, you became better. And so, in this moment, I return to you what I once tried to take. Your dignity, your peace, your name. I leave everything to you. The house, the land in Nsukka, my late husband's pension fund, even the shares in our oil cooperative. All of it now belongs to Miss Ngozi Mbakwe. Let it be known, she is not a servant. She is the true heir of this family." For a long, thick second, no one moved. Then, "What kind of joke is this?" Cecilia's brother barked. "She must have manipulated her," someone else yelled. But Barrister Aquim simply held up the signed and notarized copy of the will. "It's legal. It was witnessed by 2 people. Everything belongs to Miss Ngozi." Ngozi sat frozen. Her heart raced. Her palms were damp. She hadn't expected this. Not everything. But as the room erupted into chaos, shouting, and disbelief, she noticed something strange. The lawyer hadn't read the back of the letter. There was still one more line, handwritten in faint, trembling ink. "Ngozi, when you're ready, ask Aquim about the red file in his cabinet. The truth you've always wanted is inside." The shouting faded behind Ngozi as she stepped out of the lawyer's office, the will clutched tightly in her hand. The sun outside was harsh, almost mocking. Her breath came in shallow bursts as her mind spun. She had expected small kindness. Plot of land, maybe, not everything. And now this, a red file? A final breadcrumb from a woman she could barely forgive. She turned back. She had to know. "Barrister," she said quietly, re-entering the office after the others had stormed off in protest. "You didn't read the last line." She said something about a red file. "In your cabinet." Aquim froze. He stared at her for a moment, then walked to a locked cabinet in the corner. He opened the bottom drawer, searched, and pulled out a thick red file, dust dancing in the afternoon light. "This," he said, placing it gently on the table, "was given to me 10 months ago. Cecilia said I was only to hand it over if you asked for it yourself." Ngozi hesitated. "What's inside?" The barrister adjusted his glasses. "You should read it." Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened the file. On top was a document marked, "Confidential? Not to be shared without consent." Then photos, black and white, faded. A younger Cecilia, and beside her, Ngozi's father. They looked close, very close. Ngozi's brow furrowed. There were hospital records too. A birth certificate not hers. Another woman, Adan Bakwi. Then, a letter in Cecilia's handwriting. Shaky, stained. "Ngozi, I lied to you about many things, but the worst lie was the one I told myself. You weren't just my stepdaughter. You were the child I gave up before I married your father." Ngozi gasped aloud. The words blurred. "I was 15. It was shameful. My parents sent me to ABA to hide the pregnancy. I gave birth in silence. The baby was taken. Years later, when I met your father, he said he had adopted a bright little girl. I didn't know it was you. Not until I saw your baby photo on his shelf. And by then, I was already cruel, already broken, and I thought, maybe you would never know. But I've watched you all these years, and I knew, you are my child. And I am sorry." Ngozi dropped the letter. Her chest rose and fell as the ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. Cecilia wasn't just her stepmother. She was her birth mother. Akeem spoke softly. I suppose she wanted to die with the truth off her chest. Ngozi couldn't speak, couldn't cry. Her entire life had twisted in one moment. The cruelty, the punishment, the silence. Was it guilt all along? She rose slowly, the red file still clutched in her hand. And just as she stepped outside, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. She lied to you. Not everything in that file is true. Call me if you want the full story. 0803. Ngozi's eyes widened. Someone else knew, and they weren't ready to stay quiet. Ngozi sat alone in her new sitting room, what used to be Cecilia's prized parlor. The curtains were open, the gold frames taken down. The silence was thick, heavier than ever. The red file lay open on her lap. Birth records, a DNA result, letters of guilt, a story she never saw coming. And yet, that message. She lied to you. Not everything in that file is true. It haunted her. For hours she debated. What if it was a scam? A cruel prank? But something inside her, the same thing that told her to care for a woman who once broke her, that same voice whispered, call. She dialed the number. A male voice answered. Calm. Familiar. Ngozi. Thank you for calling. Who is this? My name is Dr. Felix Okon. I was Cecilia's doctor, and her cousin. Ngozi frowned. You were never around. I wasn't supposed to be. She kept me out for years. But I was there when she was 15, when she got pregnant. And I know the real story. Ngozi's pulse quickened. She said I was that child. I know what she wrote, Felix replied. But she wasn't your birth mother. Silence. What? Ngozi whispered. She was pregnant as a teenager. That part is true. But her baby died shortly after birth. What she never told you was, your biological mother was your father's first wife. She died during childbirth. Cecilia married your father when you were 2. But when she saw how much your father adored you, something inside her broke. She became jealous, possessive. The guilt she wrote about, it wasn't for giving you away. It was for how she punished an innocent child for a life she never had. Ngozi's fingers trembled. So, why did she write the lie? Because near the end, she was drowning in regret, and she didn't know how to say sorry. She thought if she made herself your mother, maybe you would forgive her. Maybe she could rewrite history. Just once. Tears stung Ngozi's eyes. She still chose to leave me everything. She wanted peace. And she knew you'd never take revenge. They spoke for a few more minutes. Then she ended the call, sat in stillness. So much pain. So much twisted love. So many secrets buried under pride. And yet, Ngozi didn't feel hatred. Only sorrow. The next morning, she gathered the red file, the will, and her father's old photos. She placed them in a wooden box, locked it, and slid it under her bed. Some truths didn't need to define her. 2 months later, she transformed the house. The parlor became a counseling room. The guest rooms, shelters for girls escaping abuse. The compound gate bore a new sign, the Haven, a home for healing. Ngozi stood under the morning sun, smiling gently as a mother and her bruised teenage daughter stepped through the gate, carrying a single nylon bag. She welcomed them warmly, just as she would welcome many more, because Ngozi had finally understood. The greatest inheritance wasn't land, or money, or even truth. It was the choice to turn pain into purpose. And she had made that choice, for good. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Thank you. We hope to see you in our next video.